Some of the strongest competitive Pokemon of all time are starter Pokemon, like Greninja, Cinderace, and Blaziken. These three are so powerful that they've been banned in previous generations before. Starter Pokemon are often at the center of competitive play, like Swampert in earlier generations, Superior in Gen 6 and 7. And in Gen 9 OU there is Rillaboom and Primarina, who are still very relevant. But not all starter Pokemon are thriving like this. Many of them are quite underpowered in fact, and have felt that way since their release. So why don't we come up with some well-deserved buffs for these forgotten starters, to nudge them in the right direction, and maybe give them some competitive viability. Now I know some of these Pokemon that I'm about to talk about have received new Mega Forms in Pokemon Legends ZA, which is a sort of buff to them, for sure. But I still want to explore the idea of just buffing their base forms. First, let's talk about Meganium. In many people's eyes, this is the worst of all starter Pokemon. In Generation 9, Meganium is tragically not even viable in the lowest tier of ZU. Meganium is feeling incredibly outdated in modern Pokemon. It is a mono grass type with the impressive ability Leaf Guard. Just kidding, Leaf Guard is a terrible ability that grants status immunity when Sun is active. Sun tends to be an aggressive team style, so this defensive ability on a Sun team just doesn't work and never really has. Leaf Guard has always been a pretty bad ability. Meganium's stats are also unimpressive for modern times. It has decent bulk with 80 HP and 100 in its defenses, but decent is not good enough anymore. It has a plain mono grass typing and nothing particularly incredible in its moveset either. So Meganium just sorta doesn't do anything. Even in ZU, it is outclassed by other bulky grass types like Appleton. I think even Go-Goat is more valued than Meganium in ZU. A starter Pokemon should not be paling in comparison to Go-Goat. That doesn't feel right. So how would we alter Meganium here to be a bit more functional, to stand out a bit more? There is one common suggested buff for Meganium that I think is a great idea that would be thematically appropriate and really help the Pokemon. And that is to give it the ability Flower Veil. Meganium literally has a flower veil on it, visually, so thematically, this one makes sense. And the effect of Flower Veil is that all allies who are grass type will be immune to status and immune to stat drops. Currently in the game, no grass type Pokemon get this ability. It's supposed to be used in doubles to provide status immunity to an allied grass type. So Florges gets it, for example, who's a fairy type. And Florges can provide status immunity to a grass type next to it in doubles. But if you were to give this ability to a grass type Pokemon, it would be granting itself status immunity and stat drop immunity from the Flower Veil. If Meganium had this immunity to status ailments, it would instantly become 1,000,000 times more viable. And instead of being outclassed by other grass types with superior abilities, it might outclass them. Compared to some other status immune Pokemon in Gen 9 OU like Hatterene, Goldengo, and Garganical, Meganium would be a grass type, setting itself apart with a different defensive profile. And a status immunity would make Meganium effective against a lot of common OU threats. A huge one would be Alomomola, who relies on its Scald to burn enemies. Meganium would be a rare grass type immune to being burned by Scald, which is huge. Meganium might also be nice against certain Dragapult sets. A lot of different Dragapult sets utilize Will-O-Wisp to burn enemies. It's an important part of the Will-O-Wisp Hex combo, and also a general way to permanently status things that might try to come in and resist Dragapult's common attacks. Meganium here would be completely immune to that burn, and even threaten Dragapult with a powerful knockoff. Immunity to Toxic from Pokemon like Gliscor and Clodsire and the occasional Toxapex would also really come in handy. Now unfortunately Meganium would be threatened by a lot of status-inflicting Pokemon in OU, like Pecharunt, who uses a big poison-type special attack to inflict toxic poison. Not great news for Meganium, who's weak to poison. Same deal with Cinderace, who is a Will-O-Wisp user, but also has Stab Pyro Ball, which would directly threaten Meganium for massive damage. Meganium's move pool I think would be mostly good in this role. It has Knockoff, which is a crucial option for utility and even dark coverage. It has a lot of good options for grass type stab as well, Seed Bomb for physical damage or Bullet Seed, Giga Drain for special damage that also recovers a bit of health, Grass Knot for weight-based damage, which would be great against Great Tusk, Dondozo, etc. And then Meganium also has Leech Seed, which is a really nice utility option. And it helps that there's not many grass types immune to Leech Seed in Gen 9 OU. There hasn't been that much Leech Seed usage in Gen 9 OU, I feel, because it is a slightly slow and passive way to make progress. But I think it would be a good fit on this Flower Veil Meganium. It would be able to apply just a little bit of pressure and healing against all the different things you're trying to wall. Meganium does not have Toxic or Will-O-Wisp itself to apply pressure that way, so just having something that deals a bit of damage over time would be really useful. There's not that many grass types to be immune to Leech Seed in Gen 9 either. There's just Rillaboom and Ogerpon Wellspring and the occasional Sinistcha. So it would hit a lot of Pokemon, and I feel it would work on this particular fella. Synthesis is also a form of healing that does the trick, I think. But I would be willing to give Meganium another buff here with a simple moveset addition. Sinistcha is another bulky grass type used in Gen 9 that has access to Strength Sap, which is one of the strongest utility moves in the game. This move lowers the enemy's attack by 1 stage and then heals your Pokemon based on how high their attack stat is. So this often heals for way more than normal recovery moves, sometimes even fully healing you, and it has far more PP than usual recovery moves too. This option would not be out of place on Meganium. Many grass types get it, and I think it would significantly enhance Meganium's longevity and viability to have this really amazing healing option that also serves to nerf physical attackers, which would enhance its defensive merit on top of the healing effect. The primary benefit of Flower Veil on Meganium would be that status immunity, but the stat drop immunity is also noteworthy. On passive teams, it does feel like, for example, the Shadow Ball special defense drop comes into play pretty often, so just being immune to that is a real sigh of relief. It would just eliminate that reality from happening. A lot of attacks have stat drops on them too, so just knowing that that can't happen is a great form of insurance. I've also only talked about a defensive utility set here, but you could also run a Curse Sweeper set, and that could be alright with Seed Bomb and Strength Sap. With a defensive Terastallization, this is a genuine win condition here, and it still functions in the same way defensively with the healing from Strength Sap and the utility of Knockoff. I think this would be a very good set actually, similar to Curse Garganical perhaps, a comparable Pokemon. During the time of the Black Plague, it was said that the aroma of pleasant-smelling flowers could act as a veil, a shield against the infection, against the disease. Many have described the phenomenon of Dragapult-clicking Will-O-Wisp as sort of a Black Plague on the metagame, and perhaps Meganium is the defense, the flower veil, come to rescue us from this terrible disease. Now, of course, it was later revealed that those guys back then were stupid, and flowers do not in fact prevent the Black Plague. Someone made that up. But this time it could be true. We could try again in the Pokemon world, can't we? I think we can give it another go in this context. Up next is Typhlosion, who is another Gen 2 starter Pokemon that is unfortunately ranked in the lowest tier in Gen 9. It's ranked ZU. At least Typhlosion is more viable in ZU than Meganium is. But I think this is still an unfortunate sight. Typhlosion could be better. Now, Typhlosion has the ability Flash Fire, which is also much better than Meganium, granting an immunity to fire-type attacks and a damage bonus if struck by one. But also Typhlosion is like the millionth fire type with Flash Fire in existence. Typhlosion, compared to most other fire types in the game, is rather unimpressive. It's suffering from a similar problem to Meganium actually. It's just a mono fire type with underwhelming stats for the modern climate. It has a base 100 speed and a 109 base special attack. These stats are okay, but nothing crazy. And Typhlosion doesn't have anything really to push it over that threshold and be considerable on competitive teams in higher tiers. Now what's funny is Typhlosion and Charizard actually have the exact same stat spread, but Charizard is more viable in OU because of its ability Solar Power, granting bonus damage in the sun. So it can be used as a sun wall breaker. Typhlosion does not even have that niche available to it. But this made me wonder when I was making this comparison, what if it did? What if they swapped their abilities? What if Typhlosion was the one who got Solar Power, and Charizard was the one that could flash fire. We'd be in a different reality. And Typhlosion seems much better suited for the Sun Wall Breaker role, don't you think? Because Typhlosion, being a mono fire type, is a little less vulnerable to Stealth Rock, can enter the field more times. And it crucially has access to the incredible attack Eruption, which is Typhlosion's main claim to fame in general, compared to Charizard. Eruption is a fire type special attack that's power depends on how much HP you have. If you're at full HP, it has the maximum power of an impressive 150, but the lower your HP is, the more the power decreases. This is an amazing wall breaking tool, with the overwhelming amount of power even being able to break through resistances, especially in the sun. Just so you understand how strong this would be, Solar Power provides a 1.5x boost to special attack in the sun, with the drawback of losing 1/8 of your HP every single turn in the sun. But with a choice specs, Sun boosting the power further, and the Solar Power boost on top, Typhlosion will be able to one-hit KO the standard Alomomola set by quite a lot. It deals at minimum 109% to Alomomola. The standard Blissey set, which doesn't run HP investment, would also be 2-hit KO'd by this set, with Sun active and Solar Power active, and Eruption at maximum power. That's insane. This would be a ridiculous nuke. On the level of a Chi-Yu back when that was legal, but it would have the inherent balancing point of Solar Power reducing the damage of Eruption every single turn. So you can only realistically click this a couple of times per battle. And you have to keep Stealth Rock off the field so that Typhlosion can actually enter and keep Eruption at that maximum power. Typhlosion already copied Charizard once when he was born and copied Charizard's exact stats. Why not do it again? Why not copy Charizard's new ability too? Because you would be so much better at it, Typhlosion. Charizard cannot cause an eruption. Sun teams are better than ever in Gen 9 OU with the powerful Photosynthesis Paradox Pokemon in the game, so Typhlosion would easily slot into those Sun offense teams. It would also really love Hatterene as an ally, not only to block Stealth Rock with Magic Bounce, but to Healing Wish and heal Typhlosion back to full HP for the max damage eruption again. Up next is Emboar. Emboar has always been an awkward Pokemon, hasn't it? It is a fire fighting type starter, and it is the third one to ever be made, and of the three, it is definitely the worst. Emboar was designed more as a bulky attacker with a higher HP stat and lower speed, and it was also designed around utilizing recoil moves with its ability Reckless, which grants a 1.2x power boost to attacks with a recoil effect like Flare Blitz. But these things end up being kind of anti-synergistic, because yes, you can take hits a little bit better at the cost of your speed than Blaziken or Infernape, but your damage source comes from the big Flare Blitz, which, if it deals a bunch of damage, will also deal a bunch of recoil, and therefore, who cares how bulky you are when you are recoiling yourself to death. Reckless has just never been a great ability. The damage boost you received is not worth the risk of recoiling yourself to your own demise. And especially not on a Pokemon that is slow like Emboar. If you're a Pokemon that relies on recoil moves, it's better to be something like Darmanitan, who is frail anyway, so it taking recoil damage isn't as impactful. It feels even worse on Emboar, because the recoil cheapens its actually good HP stat. So with the ability Reckless, and 3 great recoil moves in its moveset, Flare Blitz, Head Smash, and Wild Charge, I think there's a clear candidate for an ability that would immediately improve Emboar, and that is Rock Head. A different recoil synergistic ability that instead makes you immune to the recoil damage. There's a thematic problem here though, because Rock Head is usually only available on rock-type Pokemon, because they, as the name suggests, have a rock head, which makes them immune to the recoil. And that adds up logistic. Emboar though is a fire type. Can we twist our way into justifying this having Rock Head? Well, there are a couple of examples of non-rock types getting Rock Head. One of them is Basculin. Basculin can get access to Rock Head. And I suppose the justification for that is that Basculin is very angry looking, and the sheer anger of Basculin means that it doesn't feel pain and doesn't feel the recoil of bashing its head against an opponent.
And when you look at Emboar, aren't Emboar and Basculin's facial expressions sort of similar? Emboar also looks frustrated. After so many years of being outclassed by Blaziken and Infernape, it is building resentment, which has led to its foolhardiness and its sheer rage to grant itself immunity to pain itself. So Emboar is therefore immune to recoil damage and has a rock head from its sheer frustration at the world. There you go. It adds up perfectly. It makes perfect sense. The Pokemon Arcanine Hisui is a perfect example of how Rock Head is a far better ability than Reckless, because with access to Rock Head and not having to worry about the recoil damage on Flare Blitz or Head Smash, Arcanine Hisui becomes a viable wall breaker, being able to take advantage of the high power of those moves without any of the drawback. Emboar would then be able to do much the same thing, with its powerful Flare Blitz and its higher attack stat than other firefighting types, a respectable 123. It would set itself apart a little bit from Hisui and Arcanine with a different type profile, a better one defensively, and stab fighting type damage as well from close combat being useful. And please don't be upset with me, folks, please do not be upset with me, but I would give Emboar another buff here. Emboar is also kind of bizarre because it is a mixed attacker with a 100 base special attack, but it doesn't really have a great special attacking move pool. It's clearly designed far more as a physical attacker, with a wide variety of different physical attacks and barely any special attacks. There's already been 2 firefighting type mixed attackers before it, Blaziken and Infernape, so why don't you cut some of that special attack and say screw that, don't use special attacks at all, and put it into the physical attack. I say you take 20 points from special attack and put it into physical attack for a 143 attack stat, which is quite high, isn't it? But I think it would be balanced out by Emboar's very low speed of 65. So with these changes, with a bit of a stat transfer and an ability change to Rock Head, I think Emboar would actually function maybe the way it was initially designed, utilizing these recoil moves for its breaking power, being a bit bulkier than other firefighting types, and also leaning more into a physical attack role, with a much higher physical attack stat now. I could see this being viable in OU too. It would actually be decent at switching in on things because of its high HP, and it would really benefit from support from pivots like Alamamola and Galarian Slowking to get it on the field safe as well against slower enemies and pose a threat with its big, high power recoil moves. Up next is Samurott. Regrettably, Samurott has always been quite bad. A mono water type with extraordinarily average stats and an ability that leaves a lot to be desired. Shell Armor, which grants an immunity to critical hits. Not a great ability choice on a Pokemon that is not exactly the most defensively oriented thing in the world. Shell Armor can be good on Pokemon that want to defensively boost up and ignore crits. This is not what Samurott is. Samurott seems to be a more offensively leaning Pokemon. So Shell Armor feels like a complete waste here. Now, of course, there was Hisui in Samurott, who you could view as an improvement. Samurott Hisui has the ability Sharpness, which is a much better offensive ability, granting 1.5x damage to slicing moves. It also received the new move Ceaseless Edge, which is its real claim to fame. One of the best moves in the game that attacks while setting spikes on the field at the same time. But it almost makes Unnovan Samurott feel even more tragic when it has a far more accomplished cousin, or I suppose a clone of itself, or an alternate reality projection of what it would be in a different timeline. I'm not sure how to describe a regional form in terms of a familial relationship, but regardless, Unnovan Samurott has been forgotten 10 times over here, with its Hisuian counterpart taking all the glory. So could we perhaps alter regular old Samurott to be a bit more functional in the world, to stand out a bit more? Perhaps we could. Now, this is kind of a crazy suggestion, but what Samurott does have going for it is a good mixed attacking move pool. It has Surf, Ice Beam, Mega Horn even, as a nice way to hit grass types. It's got Knockoff, it has Aqua Jet for priority. It has a pretty nice offensive move pool. So if it had some good offensive ability, it would make up perhaps for its other shortcomings. Now this will make no sense whatsoever, but I think a good choice that would enhance Samurott would be Download, the ability of Porygon 2 and Porygon Z. Download is an ability that grants an offensive boost based on the enemy's weaker defense. So if they have a lower defense, you get physical attack. If they have lower special defense, you get special attack. A really good offensive ability that suits a mixed attacker because it would allow them to gain an attack boost based on the situation that benefits them in the moment. And with access to both physical and special attacks, it would make it more dynamic. There's no way in the world you could thematically justify Samurott getting download though, unless maybe he works in IT, I don't know. Samurott loves technology, he loves to download files onto his computer. I know Samurott, I know this about him. We are friends, we speak often. He's a big downloader, he's always downloading. No, what actually you could do is change the name of download to be more thematically appropriate to Samurott, but preserve the effect. They do that sometimes. They have the exact same ability with a different name on different Pokemon, like Terravolt and Mold Breaker, which are the exact same thing, but with different names. So instead of download, you could call it Otter's Ransom, which is a smart reference to Norse mythology. In the Otter's Ransom story, a dwarf named Otter transforms into an otter so that he can eat fish. Just like how Samurott, who is an otter, transforms between a physical or special attack stat to eat the fish that is the enemy Pokemon, taking on a form suited to the situation. With this new Otter's Ransom ability, Samurott would also be considered more honorable than its Hisuian counterpart, who is often considered a bit of a coward for simply setting spikes on the field and then running away from battle, whereas Samurott, Unovan version, would be more in touch with its otter roots and also more involved in the thick of combat, which is considered honorable. Up next is Delphox, the Fire-type starter Pokemon from Generation 6, who has always been rather middling, hasn't it, especially compared to its much more accomplished brother Greninja, who went on to become a superstar. Delphox has been frustrated about that for years at this point. Delphox is a Fire Psychic type Pokemon, which is a rough stat combo in modern times defensively, with Rock weakness to contend with, Water and Ground weakness, and even now Dark and Ghost weakness being such a huge problem, with Knockoff and Shadow Ball being some of the most common attacks in the game. So Delphox is just being targeted at all angles from really common offensive types, dreadful defensive typing here. Now some Fire Psychic types like Victini have made up for this poor typing with desirable traits elsewhere. Delphox never really did though. Its stats are middling. It has unimpressive bulk, only 75 health and 72 defense. And its speed and special attack aren't that fantastic either. 104 base speed is solid, above average, could be workable, but only 114 special attack is just not good enough to overcome these terrible defensive hurdles. So Delphox has terrible, debilitating defensive shortcomings and doesn't make up for it with enough offensive firepower. So it's just a middle-of-the-road Pokemon, isn't it? Its ability doesn't help much either. The ability Magician is just not very good. If the enemy has no item, it will steal the item if it strikes them with an attack. This can be an okay ability in some contexts, but it's situational, really, and is not nearly good enough to make up for any of these other flaws of Delphox. In fact, Delphox usually just runs an item. To go itemless on Delphox for Magician is not really worth it. You'd rather just run Blaze and use an item like Heavy Duty Boots, which is pretty important for Delphox's success. And I believe that there is a clear, thematically appropriate, and even obvious way to buff Delphox and make it a million times better. Delphox is a magical themed Pokemon. It utilizes magic. It has the ability Magician already. It would not be out of place whatsoever to give Delphox the incredible ability Magic Guard. Magic Guard is an ability that grants complete immunity to all indirect damage. With this outstanding ability, Delphox would, I think, shoot up immediately from a middling bad fire-type special attacker to perhaps OU viability. Perhaps it would be that much of a jump. Magic Guard would mean Delphox doesn't need to run the boots anymore. It's already immune to Stealth Rock and spikes and sand and toxic spikes and everything. So you could run an actual good item. An obvious candidate would be the Life Orb. Life Orb increases your damage by 1.3x at the cost of some recoil. You take 1/10 of your max HP after each attack. But not if you have Magic Guard. Magic Guard makes you completely immune to Life Orb recoil. Delphox would be a fire-type special attacker that can uniquely threaten Clodsire and Blissey with Psy Shock for big damage, attacking their physical defense, and that's significant, I think. It's also significant that Delphox gets Encore, because this gives Delphox a line of defense against King Gambit, which you would think would be a terrible matchup. But Encore forces them to repeat Sucker Punch, so if they ever click Sucker Punch, you can lock them into it, and then just never attack and force them to waste all of their Sucker Punch PP. Has a similar effect against Swords Dance against King Gambit. Encore is really good in the Gen 9 meta because of how nice it is against King Gambit and general boost sweepers, and also Raging Bolt, who uses Thunderclap. Encore is huge here. As I mentioned in the Typhlosion section, Sun teams are all the rage in Gen 9, with the Photosynthesis Pokemon being so powerful, so Delphox would feel right at home on a Sun team, wouldn't it? It helps that Magic Guard means you are totally immune to Stealth Rock, which is always such a problem for Sun teams. And the enhanced fire type damage would make Delphox a no-brainer there. Delphox could even be an incredible boost sweeper with Magic Guard. Totally immune to status. It will be more effective at spamming Calm Mind. Terror obviously enhances all boost sweepers, as we know with many different examples. And Delphox gets access to Stored Power, a historically great move on boost sweepers. Maybe you even run like a Grassy Seed Rillaboom Delphox team to give Delphox the defensive boost, a bit more power on Stored Power, and use it as a Calm Mind sweeper that way. That would absolutely work, I think. Some argue that using magical abilities to avoid the damage from Stealth Rock is immoral. I believe this terrible propaganda was spread primarily by Garganical, who has a working relationship with the manufacturer of the heavy-duty boots. Magic Guard is seen as a threat to heavy-duty boot sales, and this is a big smear campaign that I will not support. I think Delphox should not feel ashamed to utilize magical abilities for an advantage in combat. No. And finally we have Inteleon, who honestly I would prefer not to fix. I dislike Inteleon. I dislike this creature. Weird, thin lizard with a finger gun. I simply don't like the design at all. This is my least favorite starter Pokemon, but Inteleon today I will give you the respect that maybe you deserve. You have been neglected. You did not ask to be born. You did not ask to exist, and your existence so far has been suffering. It has been suffering because Inteleon has always been quite middling. It actually has good offensive stats with 120 speed and 125 special attack. Very serviceable offensive stats, but the ability Sniper just really sucks. Bonus damage on critical hits, and you of course have the signature move Snipe Shot with a high crit rate. But you're sort of just rolling the dice on that. The crit rate is still not very high. You can equip a scope lens, but you are much better off equipping a more consistent form of damage. It just isn't very good, and with this ability that is not providing you much benefit, Inteleon finds itself outclassed by other fast special attackers. Now, a lot of people suggest to give Inteleon 100% crit rate moves, like make Snipe Shot 100% crit. I think that might be too powerful, because the damage boost from Sniper is pretty significant, and then you bypass defensive boosts. Sniper plus 100% crit is some Hackmon stuff. I don't know if I'm on board with that, especially because it would mean Inteleon is more common and competitive, and I would have to look at it more often, which I don't want to do. I don't want to look at this guy, really. So I would suggest a more modest change here. I would change the ability Sniper into a different ability. The ability Infiltrator, which is also thematically appropriate with the whole secret agent theme of Inteleon. Secret agents are known to infiltrate the enemy base and stuff like this. This is an established fact. Infiltrator is a good offensive ability that allows your Pokemon to bypass enemy substitutes and attack through substitutes. It also allows them to ignore the effects of defensive screens like Light Screen, Reflect, and Aurora Veil. This ability would be better than Sniper and still thematically appropriate. I would also give Inteleon a new moveset addition that I think would also be thematically appropriate. Nasty Plot. Secret agents tend to be involved in nasty plots and schemes and stuff like that, so I think this will make perfect sense on Inteleon. And it would be a nice straightforward way to just make it a bit more threatening. With Nasty Plot, you can boost your special attack and use Inteleon as a bit of a win condition. It has the speed stat to to push for a win in that way. And you could see it cleaning up an endgame, couldn't you? The nice water typing also means it could maybe even survive a hit for a nasty plot. Maybe Terra to get the nasty plot off. I think these two simple changes would go a long way in improving Inteleon's career. But also, why is his body so thin and weird, and why is he standing like that? What is with this creature? I simply don't like his vibe, and he's crossing his arms. Inteleon, I hate you deeply, I hate you. Oh, you don't understand, he's based on James Bond, because James Bond is British, and Britain is Galar region, is the UK. Oh, I'm sorry, I take it all back then. That makes it smart, that it's a reference to a media property. Oh, good. Inteleon doesn't even capture the aura of James Bond at all. James Bond is far cooler. Okay, whatever. Inteleon, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean any of that. I'll speak with Inteleon after this and we'll hash out our differences and come to a compromise, okay? I promise we will. But anyway, thank you for watching my video about fixing starter Pokemon. Forgive me if I buffed these guys too much. I may have done so. People don't like when you buff Pokemon too much in a theoretical Pokemon environment. All the fan game developers who have buffed Delibird are considered outcasts for what they've done. They will never recover their social status for that serious blunder. But I hope I have not gone that far. How would you alter these Pokemon? Let me know your suggestions down below in the comments, and thank you for watching.